Los Angeles listeners, here's a heads up. I will be in town August 15th with my friend, the chef Dookie Hong. We are doing a Korea World cookbook collaboration dinner with the legendary chef Suzanne Goen at her downtown restaurant Cala Verde. Dinner is $95 and includes a copy of Korea World. To book, you can hit the link in the show notes, and I really hope to see you there.
Suburbs these days are where you have to go to find little mom and pop type finds like that people mostly don't know about. Like, I know nothing's really hidden per se these days, but you still got little spots in the strip mall in some suburb of some big city that are relatively unknown.
This is Taste. I'm your host, Matt Rothbard. The title of this episode is The Last Original Food Blogger, and really this is no exaggeration. Titus Ruscitti has been writing his influential blog, Shy BBQ King, for more than a decade, publishing dispatches from the Chicago food scene on the No Frills Blogspot platform. It's a throwback publication, tipping to Chowhound and the original Serious Eats, and it's so fun catching up with Titus about all the exciting restaurants he's visited around the Midwest. We talk about Chicago beef, tavern pizza, tacos, barbecue, the bear, naturally, and his intense interest in Midwestern foodways that has him visiting Wisconsin, Indiana, and West Michigan regularly. This is such a great conversation about one of the world's greatest food cities. I hope you enjoy it. Titus Ruscitti, welcome to This Is Taste. What is up, my man?
How you doing? Great to be here.
You know what? I'm just going to jump in and say this. You are the last food blogger in America.
Yes, I am one of the few remaining ones, at least from a dining out perspective. No recipes for me.
No recipes, but also you literally publish on a Blogspot account, and there's like many listeners who don't know what that is. So that's cool. Also, you're independently funded. You're not writing for a publication. You do it all for the love. You pay for your meals. You're not really a PR. You're not linked up with PR too much. Maybe a little.
No, not at all. I do like freelance for local publications like Chicago Magazine,
Yep.
but for that same reason, because they know that that I like to go to little neighborhood spots that are less visited and just less published by the few remaining publishing
independent guys. And then you're not on Substack, so you don't even like monetize your content. You literally do it for the straight love, the way many people got into food blogging back in the early 2000s. What drives you to publish with such frequency, Titus?
Well, that's a question that I do still get asked. One of the reasons I'm still on Blogspot is because I've become comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And it's just there and it's so easy and I know how to use it. But also because like I come from the time before social media, Instagram and TikTok of the food message board era, so to say.
Yeah.
And I was probably a little too young for eGullet and Chowhound, but here in Chicago we have a food message board that's still going called LTH Forum that I just kind of found out of college when I started getting more interested in food and dining out. And I started posting there, and my blog is kind of like an extension of my post from there. I kind of post in the same style I would post there and other people did. So it's just kind of like a message board / diary.
Yeah. Well, I like the way you write because it's very straightforward. You're giving us what we want, which is like why you go there, what is there, more the what than the why, which I feel I like both styles of writing, but you're doing a lot of like the exposition and just like explaining what the dishes are, and you're taking the cell phone photos and it's an in-bed long scroll. Fucking love it, man. Because it's so like deeply researched and cool.
Yeah. It's basically kind of a public diary, I guess. Like I enjoy going back. As much as I enjoy eating out, I guess the next best thing is going back to the vacations or, all the visiting all the restaurants and the time. And I'd like to do that just by writing it, like in a diary form or whatever.
How did you start the Blogspot account? How did you, like, what compelled you to, like, sign up for that? And it's I should be saying this from the jump. You can link to it in the show notes. I'll make sure it's very clear. It's shybbq.blogspot.com.
ShyBBQ
King. Oh,
blogspot.com.
Sorry, King. I forgot to give you the King. shybbqking.blogspot.com.
Yeah, and that's a random name. And just like the blog was, I just honestly kind of started it for fun at one point.
Yeah.
As an extension of the food forums that I participated in, including LTH Forum. And also, I got to give a shout out to Road Food, which most people these days probably don't even know. But the old, it was originally a book by Jane and Michael Stern, which kind of just about regional food and like going to places throughout the country and eating unique dishes, regional specialties, New Haven pizza, Chicago style hot dogs and the likes. And that turned into a site and it had a message board and I posted there and, my posts were always well received and I just kind of figured I would extend out or branch out to the blog, and I've kind of been stuck there ever since.
I mean, it's a level of, I'd say, like social anthropology. You could throw some ologies on it, but it really is a style of writing that is dying because I think a lot of people want to have takes. Right? It's like take masters. Like this is, I mean, you may do some rankings from time to time, but you really aren't. You're about like, let's profile the restaurant. Or the 5 restaurants or the 20 restaurants.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've always loved to explore, and I guess my favorite way to do it is through food. And as I've always told people, it's not always about like, going to these places, like trying to find the best meal of my life, but it's just about like trying to have an interesting experience. And you're more likely to meet interesting people or hear interesting stories at like a local town pizzeria than you will at like, like a brand new, like, trendy hot spot. Not that I don't like those type of places too, but it's just you can always find like local type spots wherever you are. All
right, so a really cool quote from one of your recent posts: "Without regional food, we'd be eating the same stuff." And I feel like that's like really plainly spoken and super true, because regional food makes America specifically, but all the other countries, of course, but we're talking about America here, so in such an interesting place to write about food. Now, let me ask you, what draws you to regional food, and what are some of the regional spots that you've taken on? Because it's not just Chicago.
No, yeah. I mean, what drives me to regional food is the exploration of finding it, and that includes, whether it's just going to a different neighborhood in the city you're from, or to an entirely different state or region. Like to me, regional food can be a few things, and that you got hyper-regional dishes that in their purest form can only be found in little pockets across the country. Mm-hmm. Stuff like a Sonoran dog in Tucson, or fried clam bellies in New England, or even more specifically, Essex County, Massachusetts. So, and then, some of those dishes do end up going national, like Detroit style pizza. You can find good Detroit style pizza in Austin, but what you can't get is the experience of eating Detroit style pizza at the original Buddy's on Conant Street in Detroit, or at a place like Louis in Hazel Park, like the real local type spots that are iconic to the neighborhoods and cities and states that they belong to.
Gonna transition. A great sentiment there, and we'll now get into specifics. I wanted to make a general overview of what you're into, but we're gonna dig into it. We're gonna go into some of these regional dishes, these places that you visited: Argentina, Southwest Michigan, Miami, Florida. I mean, there's so many places that you consider. Athens. I'm going to Athens next month. I want to hear about
Athens. Is an amazing
Greece.
City.
Now let me ask you about Chicago pizza right away. I mean, I want to jump right in. Why does everyone feel like they have to be a dick about Chicago pizza?
That is a good question. I think basically because people are uncomfortable with what they're not used to. And Chicago pizza is one of the more polarizing regional foods or pizzas. Pizza itself is so regional, and deep dish pizza is one of the more polarizing pizzas. But I also think that like New Yorkers specifically, they know that Chicago is probably the only city whose pizza scene can compare, or at least take on New York in a head-to-head standpoint. So that makes them feel a little uncomfortable. I'm not even talking about just deep dish. I'm saying that Chicago, we have a few styles of pizza, which is why you have to consider it one of the best pizza cities or pizza cultures because it's not just one style. Like, New Haven, Connecticut has the best New Haven style pizza, but what about other styles of pizza? Pizza is very regional and very diverse. So Chicago, has the tavern thin, the deep dish, the pan, even the Quad Cities style pizza, which is from the Quad Cities area, which is Illinois and Iowa.
Quad City, I'm just thinking coming around that train is all I'm thinking about Quad City. But I don't know about the pizza style. But what is Quad City pizza?
So Quad City style pizza is unique for a few things, including the dough, which is a very yeasty dough.
Ah, cool.
It's also unique. So it's kind of puffy, the dough, and it's unique in how it's cut. It's sliced one down the middle and then straight lines, so it's kind of long, rectangular pieces. And then it's also unique in the sausage, which is, sausage in the Midwest is superior to all other pizza toppings. Chicago is the only city in the world or city in the U.S. where sausage is more regularly ordered than pepperoni in the region. And in the Quad Cities for their sausage, it's a loose sausage. So it's almost like loose meat.
It's like crumbly.
Yeah, exactly. Crumbly with a lot of fennel. And it's just kind of, you kind of get some in every bite when it's that way, which is different. It's unique. And then the last thing that makes Quad Cities pizza unique is it is the home of the taco pizza. A place there created taco pizza using that same sausage, just seasoned with taco seasoning and then crisped up tortilla shells and lettuce and sauce. And it's actually, pretty good to try once in your life.
Yeah, you try it once, you put it off, you notch the belt and then maybe move on. I mean, I think Chicago pizza is the second best in the country. I agree with you fully. All right, this is let's do quickly your favorite pan, your favorite tavern, your favorite deep dish. Starting with pan.
Well, pan is, Lou Malnati's is always going to be one of the legends, and it's just the taste is unique. And, it's one of those things when you eat a Lou Malnati's, you know what it is. But these days, since the pandemic happened, there's been an actual kind of like a trend upward in deep dish and pan pizza. So a lot of new spots have come out, and Millie's Pizza in the Pan, which I think you went to last night, is exceptional.
Yeah, we're having Robert on the show, or we had him on the show, depending on when we do these interviews. Yeah, it's exceptional. I love that. What about tavern?
Tavern style is what I grew up on. It's by far my favorite style of pizza. You can't beat a thin crust sausage pizza from Pat's Pizza, which is in Lincoln Park. They've been there since the 50s. They're originally in Lakeview, and we used to walk to Cubs games at Wrigley Field, and we would, depending on whether it was a day game or night game, we would stop there before or after the game for a sausage pizza with my dad, maybe my grandpa, my uncles and cousins and whatnot. And so I've been eating it my whole life, so I'm kind of a homer, but also it really is, as I've grown up and had so many other pizzerias throughout the city, Pat's is still one of, if not the best, and they actually are credited with the 5-day ferment in the fridge to get it so thin, which a lot of these new spots like Uncle Kim's Pizza up in Westmont are using that style. So they're kind of like the pioneers. So
yeah, I kind of want to check out Uncle Kim's. I've heard good things about Uncle Kim's.
Yeah, it's a fantastic spot. Just make sure you order ahead because it's popular and small.
What about Vito and Nick's? We haven't talked about that. We went
Vito
there.
and Nick's we went to last year, I believe, during the James Beard Awards.
Yeah.
And that too is a childhood favorite of mine. We didn't get there as much because I've lived in Lincoln Park, but my mom is from the South Side, and I have fond memories of trips, being on the South Side and going to Vito and Nick's after a baseball game or a basketball camp or something like that. And as far as atmosphere goes, you can't beat Vito and Nick's. It's that's the thing I love about a class of pizzerias is the old school ones and the characters they have. And Vito and Nick's is one of those that will just ooze character as soon as you walk in.
I think we went there and it was it was empty, but we talked to the bartender a bit. And we had this guy who was flying out to Denver and
exactly
hanging there. And then I went there later in the summer with my friends, and there was a little bit of a funeral party. So someone had passed, and an older family member, and the entire dining room was packed with a funeral party. And it was just that dining room. I mean, listen, you can't create that on a set.
Yeah, exactly. You cannot recreate that. There's tavern pizza is becoming pretty popular
It
across
is.
the country these days. And there's some great examples, but like I said earlier, the one thing you just can't recreate is the spaces themselves and the people
And the
that
people.
make the food and the customers that are, sitting beside you.
Yeah, so it's Pat's, Vito, and Nick's, and Millie's Pizza in a Pan. Those are the three I'm hearing from
Those
you.
are three
good
fantastic
ones.
choices.
Moving on, let me ask you, who's the most underrated chef in Chicago right now?
It's a tough question because I do feel that, food media has gotten pretty big to the point where a lot of people are known. But I will say I feel that Zishan Shah and Yoshi Yamada, who are chefs and co-owners of Super Kana, should be household names in the city. It's one of my favorite restaurants in town. I go there, at least 5 times a year, which is pretty often.
What's the restaurant?
Super Kana
Super
International, which I would describe as Indian-ish. It's just a fun take. They have stuff like butter chicken calzones and a breakfast dosa hash, stuff like that. That's very high quality cooking from 2 really nice guys. And I never have taken anyone there that had anything less to say than it was awesome.
Yeah. I know the name only, and I've never been there. So
yeah, exactly. Well, I think that's a good answer.
Thank you for the answer. Okay, off the plane, first time to Chicago in ever, or maybe first time in a long time. I've gotten my rental car. I'm hitting the blue line. Where am I going, Titus? Like, is there a spot that you're like, you got to go there first right now?
Another tough question.
I know I'm asking these
You're bringing
toughies.
them today. I mean, it's tough to say. It's a tough question, but a spot that I always find myself returning to off of a plane is La Chaparrita, which is a taqueria in Little Village that I think is everyone should try because, a lot of people don't understand just how good and how deep the Mexican food in Chicago goes. And La Chaparrita is honestly, it's my favorite taqueria north of Mexico. And I've been to, LA, Dallas, Houston, everywhere.
Yeah, and Mexico City, I'm sure you've been there too.
Oh, yeah, Mexico City.
Yeah. So let me ask you about Little Village, and I think it's a really good point to dwell on because La Chaparrita is dope. I feel that place is definitely known, but I think there's a lot of perception that Chicago is maybe like a deep dish town or a fine dining town. We don't talk enough about the Mexican food here. And then I met you when we were out with Jose Relat for a couple years back, and Jose writes very extensively about Mexican cuisine in America and tacos. But like, give Little Village and like that part of Chicago some press, because I feel like you could come here and eat Mexican food and only Mexican food. You're gonna love it. It's gonna be some of the best you had in your life.
Yeah, exactly. Chicago really does have some of the best Mexican food you'll find outside of Mexico. I won't go as far as to say it's better than LA, but I would probably say it's the best Mexican food you can find east of LA. And it's definitely the best Mexican food you can find that far away from the border. And that's due to a huge, Mexican population. I believe there was a recent thing that 1 in 5 people in Chicago is Hispanic, and the majority of the Hispanic community here is Mexican, and Little Village is the epicenter of Mexican immigration to Chicago going back to the 1920s. So even today you'll hear like, oh, you got to go to Pilsen to get great Mexican food, and yeah, there's amazing Mexican food in Pilsen, but going to Little Village, in some cases feels a lot like you're in somewhere in Mexico when you're walking down 26th Street, which is the main corridor, and it's just flooded with little independent restaurants.
Poblano restaurants
yes,
from like,
and that's the other thing. It's
all over Mexico.
Yeah, the other thing is Chicago Mexican food is, like Mexican food in general, is very regional. So we have a large population of people from Jalisco, Michoacana, Puebla, and a few other places like that. So
Matamoros, like border towns too.
Not as much border town food, just because I feel like there's kind of the border town food is just you'll find that in
the border,
in Texas and in places like that. But we have a huge population from Guerrero, Mexico. So you'll see you look at the menus at these places, and you'll often see little dishes that you don't see everywhere else at taquerias. It's much deeper than just steak tacos or el pastor and chicken, and like we're talking like little things like picaditas or like tialudas and wonderful stuff like that.
Yeah, like regional specialties like that. I love the sentiment so much. I love the way that you write and talk about regional food, and it feels like Mexico is just one of many cuisines that excels in Chicago. What is something that maybe I don't even know that that Chicago has a community of chefs and restaurants, that maybe like a culture that maybe I've never heard of.
Well, one thing that I always like to point out when comparing, Chicago to other cities and what's good here that a lot of people don't know about is Eastern European food, which is also kind of having a moment right now. So it's a perfect time to talk about it with the opening of a spot like Anelia, which is a Ukrainian restaurant ran by a couple that has a couple really good restaurants, though their Korean one closed.
Bev Kim and Johnny Clark, yeah.
Yeah, and their Korean restaurant just closed, but they're redoing that into a different concept. But Anelia has been very well received. It's a Ukrainian restaurant that Johnny's mom, I believe, maybe has a little bit of play in it. All the cooks in the kitchen are females from Ukraine. But in going deeper than that, Chicago has the huge Polish population, one of the largest outside of Warsaw, if not the largest. We have the largest Bulgarian population outside of Bulgaria.
Wow.
And there's just a lot of Eastern European food that is actually much better than I thought it was 4 or 5 years ago after I started really digging deep into it and all the different dishes and regional
What's
specialties.
a Bulgarian, just off the dome, a Bulgarian dish that maybe we haven't tasted that you can get in Chicago? Do you have something off the tip of your tongue?
Yeah, there's a kebab-ish type thing. I think it's called like a kebab, like KBAP, but it's basically minced meat of usually pork or beef ground, and it's got a little cumin in there and maybe a little pepper and stuff, and it's really finely ground. The best spots will grill them over fire grilled charcoal, and they'll come with like a few dipping sauces, including like a spicy feta. It's just, if you like charcoal grilled meats, there's some really good
I love it.
Bulgarian options, but most of those are found in the suburbs, which these days is kind of how Chicago goes. To get the best or the most interesting, unique international options, little mom and pop spots, you kind of got to go to the suburbs these days due to different reasons, including rent and just immigration
City's
patterns.
getting pretty expensive.
Yeah.
Titus, okay, let's talk about The Bear. We have to talk about it because obviously the show's out and season 3's out, and it still is the talk. It's such a great show. I want to get your sense. You're a local, you're native. What's the show mean to you and Chicago?
Well, it obviously means a lot to Chicago. Chicago is it's as I like to call it, it's the world's largest neighborhood, meaning it's a big city, but it's actually really small. And when something like The Bear comes out and goes national, like Chicago takes huge pride in that. And it's just, it's been great to watch it. The storyline's great, the acting's great, but my favorite part is just seeing all of the little restaurants from Chicago, or the chefs, or the little things that most viewers, from outside of the city might not catch.
You see little pockets. You see Kasama, of course, has a big close-up. But you have like all the local spots in the show. So like clearly, and you've also got the music and the skyline, and you've got gray January and February days, which they filmed the first 2 seasons around.
And then, of course, so the other thing I love is that the Italian beef has finally been given its due. Back when I first started my Shy BBQ King blog, I also had a little side blog called Beef with Hot, which is how you order an Italian beef in Chicago. You say you want a beef, and with hot means with hot peppers on it. And I would go around to all the little beef stands around the city and score the Italian beefs, because Italian beef really was my favorite food growing up. I basically like grew up in hot dog stands and Italian beef stands. And I just love that the Italian beef has kind of gotten a national recognition. And it's also we're starting to see, it's slow, but we're starting to see places make Italian beef from scratch again, which is kind of a thing that disappeared with the Cisco-fication of food in the United States. A lot of spots don't make their beef from scratch. It's bagged in a factory somewhere and bought at a restaurant depot or delivered from Cisco, which is just not what makes an Italian beef so great.
So what is a good spot then? There's like a lot of competition out there.
There's tons of spots to get an Italian beef in Chicago, but unfortunately there's not a ton of spots to get a made from scratch Italian beef, but two places that everyone knows about that are from Chicago and should always, everyone, if you haven't been, you should definitely check out our Johnny's Beef, which is in Elmwood Park. It's a suburb that borders Chicago, so it's a little bit of a ride. And then Al's Beef, the original on Taylor Street, which is its own entity. It has nothing to do with the other locations, so they still make it from scratch there. And to me, it just tastes like childhood.
Yeah, Al's is dope, and you can get Italian ice across the street.
And Mario's, which just opened a couple weeks ago.
Oh, reopened?
For the summer,
Yeah, so I got to hang out with Mario.
Very fun.
On the stoop. Yeah, he was hanging out, just holding court on the stoop. So
Yeah. I mean, and that's one of the city's most iconic places.
Absolutely. So if you're in Chi this summer or even whenever, Al's and Mario's, super worth going to both.
Yeah, it's a fantastic 1-2 punch because they're right across the street from each other, and they're going to be relatively close to where you are.
Yeah, right. Because if you're staying downtown or even West Loop, you're like right there. Maxwell Street.
Not far at all.
Yeah,
from Taylor Street.
Or sorry, Taylor Street.
Yeah, Maxwell's right over there.
Oh my God, my dad would my dad grew up in Rogers Park, and I feel Taylor was, for him, that was like the center of culinary universe in Chicago. That and Greek Isles. For some reason, he loved Greek Isles.
Yeah, Chicago.
Greek Town
was unfortunately kind of a thing of the past.
I know.
We still have a couple Greek restaurants hanging on.
Yeah. Tell me about Indienne. That's Indienne spelled the French way. It's one of the 5 finalists for the James Beard Great Lakes. And I've not heard of this place, but you just wrote a really cool post about it, and it was a nice review. So what's going on at Indienne?
Yeah. So Chef Sarker's putting out beautiful, vibrant, great tasting plates of food at what I would call Chicago's most London-like restaurant, because it's an Indian tasting menu, and it kind of reminds me of a lot of spots that you would find in London.
Right.
At the moment.
Yeah, South Asian food in London is on a different level from America, and it's cool that you call it this place, because I think South Asian food in Chicago is not one of the main food groups, at least on the national press. So I'm learning as we go too. We've had a couple guests. Dennis Lee talked about it as well. It's great stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, we've always had Devon Street, which is a huge Indian corridor, definitely the center of Midwest Indian commerce and whatnot. But a lot of that shifting to the suburbs. So now to get like the regional Indian food that's really starting to pop up across America, in Chicagoland anyway, you kind of got to go out to the suburbs to find it.
So Titus, let's get out of town. One thing, as I mentioned at the top, is that I really like that if you're reading ShyBBQKing.blogspot.com, you are getting a sense of your travels, because you're doing these Chicago roundups, but then you're going to places like Southwest Michigan and Athens, etc. What drives you to Southwest Michigan? You've written a lot about this place that's close to me. I grew up there, but you really understand that there's a food heritage in Southwest Michigan that is really defined. Yeah.
I mean, I guess more than anything, what drives me there is the fact that it's a relatively short drive from Chicago.
Right.
Like trips to Michigan and Wisconsin are kind of an extension of summertime Chi, as people from the city like to, escape to those places for a little weekend getaway. But I mean, the beaches in Western Michigan are actually some of the best in the country, at least during July and August.
Definitely agree.
And the area has fertile soil and a favorable climate, making it a hub for wonderful agricultural stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Not to mention some of the country's best microbreweries. And it's, beautiful, scenic, wonderful outdoor area. It's starting to take off in a way that it really was kind of stalled. Like it's been a favorite of Chicagoans for more than 30 years now, but only in the last 5 years or so have we really started to see a boom in the tourism as far as culinary and brewing goes.
Grainer Farm down there near Berrien Springs, and you go up to Grand Rapids, go to the beaches, Saugatuck, South Haven.
Yeah.
I'm just giving my hometown a shout out.
It's a beautiful area for the summertime. You can't.
Yeah. But what about, let's go out to the suburbs. Mm-hmm. You mentioned it a few times in passing, but when you're in Chicago, it's a sprawly place like LA and Dallas.
Yeah.
And there's like a lot of these communities. Give us one more example of like a suburban experience that you can go to, just heading out of Chicago for a unique food experience.
Yeah, one of my favorite suburbs is Bridgeview, which is a south suburb of Chicago. and it's the home to the country's largest Palestinian population, and I think maybe even the second largest Middle Eastern population behind Dearborn, Michigan. And just like you see with other cultures and stuff, there's a lot of restaurants and chains opening from the Middle East that are doing wonderful, things like interesting Turkish style barbecue, or, charcoal grilled kebabs and stuff like that. And it's really booming, so to say, and that there's just the population keeps growing and new restaurants keep opening. And charcoal grilled kebabs are one of my favorite things to eat. Yeah, that's one of my favorite places to go.
Yo, definitely. I mean, it sounds like the suburbs alone could be its own blog,
Oh, absolutely. The suburbs these days are where you have to go to find little mom and pop type finds like that people mostly don't know about. Like, I know nothing's really hidden per se these days, but you still got little spots in the strip mall in some suburb of some big city that are relatively unknown that should be, well, way better known, or at least more.
Wait, so where are you traveling next? I know, as I mentioned, you've been to Athens, you've been to Buenos Aires, you've been to Santiago, Chile, Miami. You go there every winter. I feel like I know your travels by reading your blog, and really it's cool because you give these you give it some time. Like, you're not just doing weekends trips.
Yeah. Sometimes I am traveling for work, and most times it's for play. But
yeah.
With the summer around the corner, I really do try to stay in the Midwest, if not the U.S., just because the weather is perfect for, a trip to New York, New England, or just Michigan or Wisconsin and whatnot. I'm actually going down to Indianapolis very soon. And of course, I got a few food stops planned. So that's usually how it goes. I always got a few stops wherever it is I am.
What country do you want to go to? What's on your list?
I would say right now at the top of my bucket list is probably Istanbul.
Yeah.
Great. It's one of those places that, like I said, nothing's hidden anymore, but there's still kind of a mystique to it. Like, even the pronunciation of the places, like, it can be really hard to even pronounce the name. So I just kind of feel like it's one of those spots that would really intrigue me, and kind of just, there'd always be something around every corner that would pop up. And I will give a special shout out to Culinary Backstreets.
Yeah, it's a good spot.
Which is a wonderful travel tourism thing, and they're based out of Istanbul, if I'm not mistaken. So they have a website, and anytime they post something on there, it has my mouth watering.
You're killing it, yeah.
Has me looking at tickets.
What's Santiago like? Because I think Chile has a really interesting food scene, and of course we know Chile for the wine producing, and we know obviously this natural beauty. But let me ask you a little bit about, just generally speaking, Chilean cuisine, because I loved what you wrote about Santiago. It was really, you ate a lot of sandwiches, it looked like.
Yes, Santiago has a huge sandwich culture, and they were interesting to say the least. They love the mayo there.
Yeah.
So they really piled it on, but it was a fun trip. It's something I always wanted to do, because, going back to regional food, sandwiches are one of those things that are, they're so versatile, and so they're probably one of the more regional foods you'll have. Wherever you are, there's going to be some sort of regional sandwich, and Santiago has a handful of them. And it was really fun to go and eat them. But what I was really surprised about was just how good the new tasting menu type places were. Like, it's really having a moment. As I was led on by Nicholas Gill, Substacker. He had just written something previously about Santiago, and I never would have known about these places because they were literally just opening. And I had some of the best tasting menus I've had, like, I can never recall. Like,
what's Chilean cuisine like then? You think about, obviously, beef production. You think about terroir, having high elevation, mountain produce. But what's it like?
Yeah, in Santiago, it was, I'd call it versatile, just because, it's the big city, and they have, it's very similar in a lot of regards to places like Peru and Argentina, but it just seems to be a little toned down from that standpoint. There's a lot of German influence in it, so, like, it can be pretty heavy in a lot of ways, like very porky. They love their ice cold beer served with a pork shank, for instance.
Cool.
Which might as well be in Munich. But it's I would definitely recommend checking out Santiago, as an add-on to somewhere like Buenos Aires or Lima.
What's the dollar situation like in Argentina? I think we read headlines that, the economy in Argentina has had some ups and downs, right?
Yeah.
Is the dollar pretty strong in Argentina?
Yeah, it's as strong as I can ever remember anywhere, at least from my last time there, which was in February. But it's so volatile and going up and down. I'm not sure exactly how it is now, but if you're looking for a place where your dollar can go far, Buenos Aires is about as good as it gets right now. It's not a cheap place to get to, but man, once you're there, it's pretty ridiculous how cheap stuff is. And
What are you saying in terms of the cuisine in Buenos Aires? Are you what are some dishes that come to mind, or anything? Just general thoughts on visiting it.
Yeah, I mean, well, food-wise, what first thing that I guess comes to mind when you ask about that was I did not know empanadas could be that good. I mean, I've always liked empanadas. I've had some damn good ones over the years, but going to Buenos Aires ruined empanadas for me now. Like I can't. The ones back here are like I said, they're good, but they're just on the next level in Buenos Aires.
Yeah, and you've got a great wine scene, of course, in Argentina.
Yes, we went to Mendoza, which was a fantastic trip if you like that type of environment, like a winery.
Malbecs, like the
with
inky wines.
Yeah, with the beautiful scenery and birds chirping and the sun shining. Mendoza's a great addition to a trip to Buenos Aires, but Buenos Aires is the reason that at least I think you want to go to Argentina.
Yeah, I love it.
Probably.
I love it. Your travels. The last one is Greece, because you spent. I think I was catching you more on the on Instagram. Shy BBQ King on Instagram. Good follow, because when you land, you're hitting the gram hard.
Yes,
and I love that. And I was like, man, I think Titus has some spots for me in Athens.
Yes, I absolutely have some spots in Athens, which is a city that I don't think gets commonly as mentioned in Europe as places like Paris or Madrid or Barcelona, Rome, and those type of spots. But it should definitely be visited.
Yeah, I'm curious about.
There's a spot there that I'd love to send you to called the Porto that I was led to by Culinary Backstreets. It's just this little 2-3 man operation right near the Central Market. That's lunchtime only. That's basically cooking up what you would describe as Greek peasant food, but as you know, peasant food is actually some of the most heartwarming and soul-soothing food. And so whatever it is they're cooking up that day is going to be ridiculously priced in terms of money, and it's going to be delicious. And I highly recommend.
Do you have any dishes that you remember from that visit?
Yeah, there was one thing we had which was like a mashed chickpeas, served with like some local Greek olive oil and some super crusty bread with just some sardines that one of the guys sitting at the table had deboned and did every little detailing too. It's nothing, like trendy or whatnot, but it's just if you want to eat like a local, the Porto in Athens is a place that I still think about.
Let me ask you, my writing partner, Daniel Holzman, has been trying to perfect lemon potatoes, roasted potatoes, forever. Do you have an experience in Athens? I'm putting you on the spot. Was there a lemon potato situation, a visit, a lemon potato moment that you would consider notable?
Honestly, I don't recall one off the top of my head.
This is okay. This is what we're talking about.
I do know what you're talking about, though. I love the Greek potatoes with a little bit of lemon and the Greek seasoning is next level. But I do wonder if it's more of a Greek American thing.
That's what I'm thinking.
I don't really recall seeing it there. And, I went to lots and lots of spots and they had lots of like fries and stuff like that. But now that you mentioned that,
roasted.
I don't recall seeing the roasted lemon potatoes.
I'm going to come back and report on that because
I'd love to hear what you find.
I'm curious about that dish and if it is truly a Greek American dish. All right. So this is an important question. Titus, what's the biggest Chicago betrayal? The implosion of Dom's and Foxtrot, these well-regarded micro markets and influencer markets, or Oprah going on Ozempic?
Boy, that's an interesting question.
Sorry.
No.
I wanted to get a Chicago specific.
I'm not even quite sure about the Oprah and Ozempic thing. So I guess I would definitely say Dom's and Foxtrot just because it came out of nowhere. It was really, one day, people were there and it was busy or whatnot, and then the next day the news suddenly came that they closed.
Yeah, so what was Dom's exactly? So the idea and the news has been that Foxtrot, we've covered it extensively on the show, this kind of well-funded market covering the world of CPG was having some financial trouble, so they merged with this kind of like legendary long-running market called Dom's. I don't even know if it's long-running, but it had a good reputation. They merged, and then they went bankrupt within a year. So what was Dom's all about?
Yeah, so Dom's was ran by a local grocer, like a legendary local grocer who started a Dominic's, which used to be the prevalent grocery store of the Chicagoland area.
Of course, I know Dominic's. I didn't realize they were connected.
Yeah. And then he sold Dominic's and opened a place called Mariano's, which is kind of these days now the prevalent Chicagoland grocer, though it had since been sold to Kroger or one of the big 2 or 3, everything's corporate now. And so then after that, he ventured out and opened a spot called Dom's Market, which was, I guess, kind of supposed to be what Mariano's was originally before it was sold, but it just never caught on because, quite honestly, it wasn't quite what they wanted it to be. At least I didn't think so. It was more so just like a typical supermarket than a special supermarket.
So it didn't have any like extra, like the Dominic's had a lot of local products there.
Yeah,
I like Dominic's for that reason.
Yeah, and Dom's did have a few local products, and that's the thing that sucks most about the closings of both Dom's and Foxtrot is both of those stores did stock a lot of like local, like independent mom and pop, so to say, brands, Chicago brands, be it like little like sauces or seasonings or even produce and meats and stuff like that. So that was in terms of Dom's, that was and Foxtrot, that was the worst part about it. But honestly, I didn't really shop it either.
Yeah, it wasn't your vibe. I got a couple local product questions, and if you don't have a response, you don't need it. But what do you think about Canfield chocolate soda?
Canfield chocolate soda. I haven't had one in 20 plus years.
But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. But I hadn't. Not only have I not had one, I haven't thought of it in 20 years.
I know, but it was such a like Midwestern thing, and
it was
the diet too. Wow,
it was, and it's one of those things that just disappeared. The regional food, the regional treats, so to say.
What about Matt's chocolate chip cookies, Matt's peanut butter chocolate chip cookies? Do you have any opinions about those?
I do like Matt's cookies. That's still in Chicago, I believe. I drive by the factory every now and then, and I do love them. They're soft and they're delicious.
I bought a bag at Jewel Osco last night.
Nice.
I'm in town, and I literally do that every time I'm in Chicago.
That's your Chicago souvenir.
I go to Jewel Osco. You can get them online on Amazon, but
not the same.
No,
right?
Man, come on. Like they're baked here in Wheeling.
Yeah,
they're baked in Wheeling, so you can't like buy them on Amazon. It's a trouble.
Yeah. It's a regional specialty, regional treat.
What's your Canfields and Matt's? Do you have your own personal favorite products?
Well, I mean, you cannot beat a Vienna beef natural casing hot dog. They're not easy to find. You kind of have to go, if you're a Chicagoan, you have to go to the factory store to find them. For some dumb reason, they don't sell them in the grocery stores. They only sell the skinless, but as any real Glizzy fan knows, it's all about the natural casing hot dogs.
Always. We and Hebrew Nationals is the same way in New York. Getting the natural casings can be challenging.
Yeah. I'm not sure why, because natural casing, I found a fun little thing in one of my friend's homes a while back, which was, it must have been from the 1920s maybe, and it was basically a thing about natural casing hot dogs and how they were far superior to anything else.
It was like an article, like a written piece.
It was just kind of like almost
poster?
like an advertisement. Yeah, like select natural casing, like over skinless.
Obviously, you want natural casing.
It was like something like 4 in 5 Americans prefer a natural casing hot dog.
Some Don Draper shit there. Really funny. Titus, on This Is Taste, we ask guests about their discerning taste. So to close this interview, here's a little rapid fire, Fast and Furious taste check live from Chicago. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
The best fruit.
Blueberries from Michigan.
My guy. Truly my answer. If you're this far in the show, you might listen to a few episodes of This Is Taste. I don't answer the questions because I'm the host. I don't have to, but listen, we are aligned.
We are aligned.
That is like my favorite.
Season's coming.
Absolutely. The worst vegetable.
I don't have an answer for it. I find that all vegetables can be pretty damn good when you Soup them up right.
Some Midwestern nice shit, man. Come on. Come on. There's not one that you're just like, nah.
I mean, I guess Brussels sprouts, when not done right, are pretty off-putting.
When they're bad.
But when they're done right, they're good.
The best dessert.
Category.
Oh, crazy. Explain it a little bit.
So basically, you've probably heard of shave ice, Hawaiian shave ice. It's a direct descendant of kakigori, which is from Japan. It's the thinnest, softest shaved ice, like the stuff that just dissolves on your tongue. But what sets it apart, at least from most spots in the U.S., is the syrups and the sauces and what they put on it are typically homemade, and as is done with, Japanese people are obsessed with their craft, and same goes for any kakigori.
Kakigori, yeah, when it's so cloud-like, it's nice. Have you ever had a style with like milk instead of ice?
Oh yeah, I love any and all styles, but on a hot summer day, nothing beats like a fruity kakigori of some sort.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great call. Your favorite American fast food chain?
White Castle.
That surprises me, but also you probably know the good ones, where the good ones are.
Well, that's the thing about White Castle is terrible if they're not made properly. And for them to be made properly, the bun has to be super steamed.
Yeah.
And if you've ever had a White Castle with an unsteamed bun, they're terrible.
Oh, yeah.
But the steamed bun is the difference. And it's probably my favorite because in Chicago, specifically on the south side, White Castles are kind of a thing at weddings as the midnight snack or whatever.
Yeah.
Like when people are had a few too deep and the dance floor is really rocking, usually someone will appear
with a Crave crate or two.
With, yes, exactly, a case of Crave sliders.
Yeah, Crave crates are part of my youth and part of my adulthood alike.
Yeah, there's nothing else like them, and they're true sliders. It's really actually hard to find a proper slider in around the country these days. There's only a few independent spots left, but White Castle is they're real sliders.
Your favorite cookbook of all time?
Another tough question, but I think I would have to go with Essential Italian Cooking by Marcella Hazan. It's one of the first books I started cooking with out of, I would say maybe even when I was in high school. My parents had it, so it was just something that one of the first books I learned from, and her marinara sauce is still to this day the best in the business, with just the onion and the butter.
I mean, that's such a classic dish, and we haven't really talked about your own personal heritage, and you're tied to Italian cuisine and your family, but to know that Marcella had a spot in your family's kitchen means a lot.
Yeah. My dad is Italian, Chicago, Italian born and raised. My mom is Southside Irish, born and raised, so I am an Italian, Irish Chicagoan.
Which is truly iconic. iconic. Yeah, I feel like those are the two sides of the coin that that Chicago. I mean, North Side Jews, where my dad grew up at Rogers Park. That's a whole vibe too.
Yeah, I'm just missing a little Polish,
a little Polish,
Jewish, a little African American, but yeah, Chicago, Mexican. We are truly a diverse city.
You bring up a lot of great points, and it is such a diverse city, and I think. You see it in The Bear, just as one example, the casting, you try to, represent Chicago, but it does truly, it's not just some Hollywood shit. It's like, it's a very diverse city.
It is. It's a diverse city. And like I said earlier, it's the world's largest neighborhood. It's unique in that way. It's a big city, but it doesn't always feel that way.
Your favorite city outside America to visit for food?
So I have 4 cities that I think have solidified themselves as the best of the best. And they include Tokyo, Bangkok, Paris, and Mexico City.
Ah, right there. Oh, my goodness. That's a lot of travel right there.
It is.
But do you have a favorite out of the 4?
I would say Tokyo is probably my favorite food city because it's, again, I love to be overwhelmed. And there's nothing quite as overwhelming as Tokyo. I forget the exact numbers, but the amount of restaurants that Tokyo has is just ridiculous. Yeah. It's an insane number.
It's much higher number at times.
It makes New York
4x
small.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of small single operator spots throughout this sprawling city.
Yeah, and they all specialize in something, which I really appreciate, is when a place tells you what you're going to order.
Yeah, no doubt. A cuisine you would like to learn more about?
Indian and Pakistan food. I eat them all the time, but I'm still learning so much about them, and I find different dishes and unique dishes that I would like to try from both cuisines. We have a lot of good options here, but I'm really interested in basically learning more about them in their natural habitats.
Absolutely. I would say, man, there's just a lot to learn, right?
Yeah, exactly.
By just going out to the suburbs, taking the trains out to places, going to rural Wisconsin.
Yes.
And your curiosity, Titus, it's striking, and I appreciate it because you're not doing this for the money. Literally, you're not paid. So
no, I have a few little side gigs I do, but you know what I mean? People find me through what I do, and that's kind of how I describe my blog. When they say, do you have a resume? I say, yeah, here's my blog.
Do you ever give private food tours to people, like paying?
I do food tours for a lot of people over the years.
Yeah.
And you can always reach out and find me. I love to lead food tours because I love showing off Chicago.
Right on. Let's plug that. If you've gotten this far, you're probably interested in what Titus has to say. Just reach out on Instagram.
Yeah, you can reach out on Instagram at ShyBBQKing or email at ShyBBQKing@gmail.com, or you can find me through my blog, ShyBBQKing.blogspot.com.
Yo, for real. If you're coming to Chicago for work and you got a group, or just solo even, reach out. Titus is a good hang. We're gonna go have some lunch after this interview. I think we're gonna go hit something up.
Yeah, we're gonna get something good.
All right, the last one, your favorite sandwich.
Well, let's end it with on a very Chicago note. Like I said earlier, the Italian beef is what made me love food, I believe, because when I first left Chicago, when I went to school, and I went to Tampa before I went to Madison, I didn't realize that Italian beef wasn't a thing available everywhere. And I was shocked by this, and it made me love it even more. So Italian beef to this day, I don't eat it nearly as much as I used to, but a good Italian beef is, to me,
do you have it wet?
Yes, wet, sweet, and hot.
Wet, sweet, and hot. So let me ask you, have you had a Philly cheesesteak ever?
Absolutely. I love a good Philly cheesesteak.
Are you into the cheesesteak, or do you feel like the Chicago beef is...
Well, I think the beef's a far superior sandwich to the cheesesteak and the French dip. But, if I'm in Philadelphia, I'm eating cheesesteak and hoagie and roast pork and so forth.
Roast pork, man, that's the guy. Skip the cheesesteak. Just saying. Hot takes. Sorry, Philly.
Cheesesteak's later in the night. But
night.
If you're not going to go out too late, I suggest the roast pork.
You're going to Brenda's. You're getting
a hoagie.
Yeah, get the hoagie. Titus Ruscitti, thank you so much for joining This Is Taste. This Is Taste is hosted by Eliza Abarbanel and me, Matt Rodbard. The show is produced by Shalia Harris and Pat Stango and edited by Clayton Gumbert. Theme music by Steve Rydell. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter for updates on all cool things that are happening.